Hi everyone, and good evening once again. Me and Mohit are back to have one more panel discussion where we can help you to understand another interesting session which we had last week in PIM. But before we start, as usual, a quick introduction. So I myself, Kunal Jaiswal, I have been working in IT industry from last 12 plus years and been associated with PIM from last 2.5 years, and it has been an amazing and transformational journey for me. Mohit, would you like to quickly introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. I am Mohit Chaudhary from Kolkata. I am a chartered accountant doing a job in a corporate for the last 3 years, and I am associated with the book club and the PIM session for last 6 months. And as rightly said by Kunal, it has been a transformational and really I am seeing my results. Thank you.
That's wonderful. Great to know, Mohit, that it's really helping you out, and that's what I can offer to all the listener who was, seeing this video right now. That if you are looking any sort of help in your communication skills, in your public speaking skills, in your, leadership skills, in your soft skills, so we are there for you. Do part of our book club, be part of our book club, and it can really help you out. Now, coming back to our today's discussion. So last week, as we discussed about the leading yourself, and we shown you the 8 component of wheel of life. We also discussed about the money, and we discussed about the career. Now, this week in the PIM, Vijay has touched base on a very important aspect of wheel of life, which most of the time, knowingly or unknowingly, we ignore, and that is nothing but relationship. Now, in a current era, we are so much behind career because it's so fluctuating world around us that if you are not focused in your career, if you are not focused about your personal growth, you miss a lot of things. You stay behind in that rat race. And no matter what we say, but you cannot leave that rat race also. I mean, because you have a family to take care of. And that's where this relationship, which is more important, because we say that we are working to take care of our family, but in that process, what happens, this family goes, I mean, we let go this family for some time, or we don't become intentional to put more time in that relationship, whether it's family, friends, or anyone. And that's what Vijay's point this week was, that it is so important to be intentional to spend time on the relationship. So Mohit, how I would like to start today's discussion, because relationship is, I know, important for each one of us, and we value that also. But what do you think are the major reason where people get confused, or I would say people unknowingly leave this relationship aspect? They were not able to focus on that relationship. So what was your experience like? Because you are also have been working in corporate for quite some time now. So what has been your experience on that?
Yeah, the thing that Kunal has said that I think there is some disturbance. Yeah, the thing that Kunal has said is true, and there is no fault in it. I can just relate this thing with the example of my manager. Although he is very good as a person, he helps me a lot, guide me a lot in the work, and also helping me to solve some of my personal issues also, as I discussed with him. But when I visited his home, I found that there are a couple of issues that are there in his personal life also, and which he some or the other way fails to manage. Although he is not discussing these things with me directly, but somehow I came to know that it is mainly because of the communications, or the difference is because there is lack of communication between him and his family members. And the main reason for the lack of communication is the lack of time that he is devoting towards the family members. And because every time that I get a call from the office for working late at night or for doing an early morning job, I am ready, and so the my manager also, because I am getting paid for it. And we also have a fear that we have to create an impression, because if we don't create an impression in front of our seniors, then it might impact our appraisal and our earnings in short. But unknowingly, what happens is that in the way of creating an impression in the face of my manager, I forget to create an impression in the face of my family members. I don't create the like I don't devote the time for playing with my children or taking my wife out of for a trip. So that the important times that I'm devoting to my work is having an opportunity cost. The opportunity cost is the time that I should devote with my family, maybe on the weekends or maybe after office hours. And that due to that lack of time leads to lack of communication, and lack of communication leads to irritation or the agitation between the family members or the spouse or children, whatever the case may be. But yeah, all these things slowly and slowly starts growing and growing. And after a certain point of time, when the things get out of control, it bursts out. And then we find the results. Because when the like it's just like a tree. When the tree is small, no one realizes its importance. But when it grows and grows, and when it becomes tall and everyone finds sees, then they realize that yes, the problem has become bigger, and they are not finding the solution to do it. So basically, in a short, I can say that the problem is basically a lack of communication, and the lack of communication is due to lack of time that we devote to understand our relationship or our relatives or the family members, and that's the main reason.
Right. So that's so true that yes, because of lack of communication, we are not able to create a strong bond with our family, our relationships, right? Whether it's friend, family, spouse, kids, or anyone. But I'll come to that point, but later. But before that, two another thing which you have mentioned, Mohit, in your conversation. One, that we are always ready for our office. If my manager calls me, I'm always ready. But the same time, same kind of alertness or same kind of devotion sometimes we lack to show to our friends and family, right? And that's where a very interesting question at the start of the session Vijay has asked, that what kind of a person you would like to be, a director with a certain good package, 50 70 life of 75 lakh of package, but a home where you don't want to go, or a director which may be having a little less package but a home where you love to go. And obviously, if a normal human being, it's a no-brainer that we would love to have a little less in the package, but at a happy home where I would love to go. But the question is, what are we doing to create that happy home? Are we being intentional? Are we putting any effort to create that happy home back? I mean, our relationship with anyone. And if we are not doing it, and as you rightly mentioned, sometimes communication play a very key role to that. If we are not doing that extra effort, it's not going to be happen by itself. And again, that intentionality comes, like you mentioned, that if manager calls me, I'm always alert. But for my wife, I can sometime, maybe for my spouse or maybe for my parents, I sometimes take it for a granted. I think they will understand, and that's where the problem starts happening. So when you talked about the communication part, Mohit, it is important to understand the communication in a context, because in most of the time the communication is all people understand, normal people, like my understanding of communication about what I am telling. That was my understanding of all about communication. But now, since we have been part of this wonderful association, we both understand the communication is way beyond just telling. It is way beyond what you understand or what you want to say, right? So when you talk about communication, how you define in a relationship, especially in terms of your parents, in terms of your friends, in terms of your, let's say you are not married right now, so let's say for people who are married and having a kid, so how you define that communication to be happening?
Yeah, although I am not married, but yeah, I saw my parents and my friends also. So what I think that the communication is more of about listening rather than speaking. As Vijay every time says that God has given us 2 ears and one mouth because He wants us to listen more than to speak less. And the key of communication is understanding. There should be flexibility. I am ready to give more than to take more. When I am like in an office, also when I'm communicating to my friends of opposite gender, I find that their perception that they think is something different what the male perception of things. Because obviously God has created two different person, male and female, so their thought process, their thinking is different. It's not that I am right or she is wrong. It's not that she is right or I am wrong. It's that there's two different thought processes and there are two different views. And we need to understand both the views and take the decision properly by after proper discussion and proper dis- understanding. And that's the key part of the communication. And that will come only after listening her views and communicating properly my views after listening. And then uh, also satisfying her also means I can also persuasive skills that's not forcing her but to persuade her to follow the steps as I want to do. It's not that I can force someone. It's just that I can make her understand that why I think it's so. I can substantiate my points through the logics or emotions. And secondly, I should always be ready to give more rather than to expect someone to give me more because it's in my control. What I expect the others, she might know that I expected it. And so she might not do what I want, what I thought of doing it. But yes, what I can do something more to make her happy, to make her feel comfortable, and to give her priority or to feel make her feel important. If he thinks if the like my parents or my sister or let's say my spouse, if she feel that I am important, she is important for me, then obviously she will make her happy. She will be happy, and she will make us also happy. So in a nutshell, I can say that communication is all about listening, understanding, and also more, giving more rather than to expecting others to give more. So that's
Absolutely
my take.
wonderful. Yeah, wonderful points, Mohit. I mean, you very nicely mentioned about what communication as skills is all about. It is about listening. Absolutely, it has to be an open and transparent discussion where I should be open to understand the others, where I should give enough opportunity to the other person to express himself, because that's where the two-way communication happens. You also talked about understanding the other person. Now that takes lot. I mean, that has a very deep meaning when you explained about it, that understanding a personality, like you have given an example that in a corporate, let's say if I have a colleague who is a lady, her way of understanding things or her personality would be completely different than my manager who's a male. Same way back at home in my relationship, my wife's personality could be completely different than my mom's personality. My kid personality could be completely different than the other kid's personality. So when the communication has to happen, I first need to understand the kind of person they are. And that's where DISC helped me big time, because after doing my CSR report, I mean CIR report, I am very clear that how to understand different people personality. I mean, I will not go detail in that, but yes, of course, it talks about DISC. And when you know the what kind of person the other person are, you can mold your communication in such a way so that it suits to the other person's personality, and it help them to understand your way of communicating as well, and you understand the other person's way of communicating. So understanding the personality is a key. Second, you talked about having a patience to listen. Now, this is one area I guess today's world we all need improvement in, isn't it? I mean, in today's world, everyone is ready to express themselves. There are so many medium to express your views, express your opinion, express your thought. But how many of us are there to listen others' opinion, listens other points of view? And that's very important to have a communication, especially when we talk about a relationship. Because in a relationship, as you rightly said, it is not about who is right or who is wrong. In a relationship, it is all about finding the middle path and having a happy home, right? And that's where it is so important that when I'm talking to my parents, when I'm talking to my spouse, when I'm talking to my kids, I should have a patience of listening. That's the most important aspect in a communication skills. Now, you also talked about persuading, right? Instead of forcing anything to anyone, having them influencing them in a such a way that they should like to do certain thing, which if I want them to, right? And that's where the love language comes in the picture. Vijay very nicely talked about that if we understand each other love language. Now, for that, there's a wonderful book called Five Love Languages. If any one of you in the audience have not read this book, you are married or you are in a relationship, you must read this book, because this can help you big time to understand your spouse love language. And once you understand that, you will be able to take care of it big time. So that helps. Now, apart from this, Mohit, Vijay also talked about that how other influence creates sometime problem in us, because I just wanted to focus a little bit more on the problem aspect before we come to the solution. So we just talked about the influences we carry in our own life. For example, the kind of relationship I might have seen back at my home, sometime that carry an influence in my own relationship as well. Like if my parents, if I have a brother or sister in their relationship, so that influence comes to my relationship all as well. Have you have any experience in that area that I mean, if you have seen around you, I mean, of course, as I said, you are not married, but have you seen people carrying that influence in the relationship?
Yeah, as you rightly said that I have seen many people having their experiences like from the home that from which they come, from the expectations that they carry. Like one of my friends, she recently got married or she recently got engaged, and after 1 month of engagement, she just called me up and had discussed her issues. Her issues basically most relating to her experiences because the attention she usually got from others before the engagement is not getting that much of attention from the spouse. Although although the spouse they are not wrong in it because the spouse is busy with some other stuff or other work, he's giving his attention, he's trying his best, but he's not meeting his expectations that he carries because of his previous experiences. So that's the thing, and that's the main point of differences that might be arise maybe in the future or not. But yeah, she is understanding and has communicated all these problems and has taken care of all these things. So the issue is sorted. But
Mm.
yes, the what I am trying to say is that from the past experiences, that my thought process is guided by my history or my experiences. If I come from a poor family, I will not be carrying much expectations from anyone. But if I come from a very well-known or a very rich family, then I will surely carry lots of expectations from my future husbands or future spouse. So, and
Right.
if that expectations is not met, then might not be happy, that much happy. And it's not about only the money or the well-being, but it's also about the relation that I see, like the relationship with my parents or with my relatives that I see. I A sense of happiness or a sense of like the pampering that my mother used to get from my father. I also think that the same type of pampering was much more than that should I also receive from my spouse during the courtship period or after the courtship period. Or but if I don't get that much of thing from my spouse, then surely I will not be satisfied. So these are some of the things that yeah I have seen with my friends with getting engaged or getting married. But yeah, they are trying to solve it through discussions, through mutual understandings, and that's the problem, and here is the solution also.
Wow, those two are wonderful example to elaborate the point, Mohit, that how we carry an influence and how sometimes that influence create unknowingly problems in our relationship. Like you rightly mentioned, let's say your friend who were being pampered throughout his life, and all of a sudden when a spouse come, fiance come in her life, and because of genuine reason, of course, because he was busy in his career, job, and everything, he was not able to devote exactly same amount of pampering to her, and she felt that's creating stress in her relationship. Now here there was no problem, but just because our the way we have been grown up, the kind of an influence we have from our parents and our siblings, we are expecting the same from others, which other person don't even understand, and that creates a stress. Like in your case also, you rightly mentioned that you have seen your mom being pampered from your dad, and that's exactly what you would expect in your relationship. But let's say whoever comes in your life, if she has not come from that school of thought, for her it may not be the required thing, and that could become a stress in a relationship. So we need to really be careful that our influence should not create stress in our relationship. We should eliminate those influence. Now it's not easy to do that because we have been grown up with that kind of an influence for a longer period, but yes, as you rightly mentioned, how they sorted out with the transparent communication. When they communicate transparently, they both were able to understand each other points of view, and they were able to sort out the stress. So it's so important in any relationship to work to make sure that it works in a right direction, to have a transparent discussion. And that's where there were few points which Vijay talked about in terms of solution. Like you already covered one point which was about more not to have more expectation. So would you like to I mean, if I summarize all the things what we have talked right now before I come to the solution point, we talked about that how it is important to be focused and intentional about relationship, because until unless we have a happy home, we may not be able to focus in our other aspects of life, whether it's a career, work, or anything. We have talked about your manager examples. We have talked about other examples as well. Now, to sort this out, it is important to have a transparent communication. We also talked about how influence of our friends and relative or what we have been grown up with sometimes creates a problem in our relationship. We also talked about if we don't understand the love language of our spouse, that also sometimes creates a problem in our relationship. So these are the reasons which creates problem. There are many which Vijay had talked about in PM session, but because of time constraint, we may not be able to cover. And that's why we encourage our audience to be part of PM session themselves. But then Vijay have talked about the solution as well. So when you see all these things, Mohit, and since you are part of the session as well, how do you see to apply all these solution in your life when, let's say, when you get married or with your parents as well? So from the solution aspect, if you can put some light on.
Mm, like from the polls that the Vijay has conducted, or from the examples, or from the questions that Vijay has raised, I found that there is only one solution to it. That's the communication.
Hmm.
Communication is the best way to eliminate all the problems that arises. And in fact, I am experiencing this also because, yeah, not with the spouse because I don't have any, but yes, with with other members like my friends or with my mom or with my sister. If I have any problems or she is getting any problem, we should communicate it with it and let's try to eliminate it or understand it. And that's the key for the problem. Although There are some topics which some find it difficult to communicate it, maybe of different reasons. Because I don't think that why I face any problems. I think that the value which I carry for that problem, the same value might not be carried by the other person to whom I am communicating to it, or same will not be able to understand it. So what's the point of communicating it? And that's where I goes wrong, because it's my assumption, and I'm putting my assumption before communicating my thoughts to someone else. And when I communicated these thoughts, I found that yeah, but my assumption was really wrong. So I thought that we should communicate it without any pre-assuming minds, without any thinking, or without any having pre-communication notions. And after communicating everything, you will feel relaxed, peaceful, and I think that all the problems will be solved there on only. So that's
That's wonderful. That's wonderful, Mohit. You very nicely mentioned about the assumption aspect. This one point is very important to convey, that the assumption is the enemy of a transparent communication. When we create our own thought without discussing and without understanding or without asking the other person's point of view, we create our own assumption. That creates a bottleneck in any communication. And you rightly mentioned to all these problems in any of the relationship, whether about the influence, whether about the understanding each other, love language. The one and most important solution is having a
yeah. Hello, Vijay. There is some issue. I think network issue is there on my end.
I think there was some network issue at my end. Sorry
Okay.
about that. Yeah. So the communication, I was talking about communication. So communication is way beyond all these things, right? So it's important to understand all that from our side. And that's where to conclude these guys, Vijay has given the 4 point to come up to a mindset where we can fix our relationship stress. First, he has said that it is important to accept that there is a problem in relationship. If there is, if you feel there is, then first of all accept, because until unless we accept, we don't work for or we don't look for solution. Second, the most important thing, and I guess this point we mostly ignore, that assumption part which Mohit talked about, that I might be the reason of the problem. Now we mostly think the other person is not doing that, the other person is not doing that, and that's where the problem is happening. No. What if we start understanding that we might be the problem? Because when you think from that point of view, you don't try to correct the other person, because the more you try to correct the other person, the more problem you create. The moment you start correcting yourself, that's where the things start going in the right direction. And that's where the third point comes in the picture, which is about expectation. Mohit already talked about that when we start expecting less and accepting more, that means when we expect less, that the other person do this, other person do that, and we start accepting more. Okay, the person is like that. How about if I change, if I do things differently, if I put more time in my relationship, the relationship aspects start improving way beyond the current position it is. And it is so important that we all stay in a good relationship. And the fourth point, which I just missed, very nicely, because most of the time what happened, we read all these books, we all understand all these points, we try to do it, but then at a certain point we give up, saying that अरे यार कुछ भी नहीं हो सकता है, मेरी वाइफ ऐसी है या मेरा हस्बैंड ऐसा ही है या मेरे पेरेंट्स ऐसे ही है, and we all give up. Vijay has very importantly mentioned that no relationship is a perfect, it's a lifelong process, but it is worth putting effort for that process, because when you are happy in your relationship with all that effort, you were able to give your best in every area of your life. So these were the 4 points with which he has concluded the session. So before I conclude, Mohit, any concluding remarks from your side?
Mm, yes, I want to say that although we are working for the money, for the goals, and it's yeah one of the most important priorities and most important thing, but we should also remember the person from whom we are doing all these things. We all know that we are not doing anything for ourselves, but for our family. Then we should remember our family also, and we should give the same priority, or yes, the more priority to first our family members, then to our job and work. Because yeah, a healthy family, a healthy home is a healthy life. and that should be the goal of our life, and not the goal of making our manager happy.
It's important to make manager happy, but not at the cost of our family.
Yeah.
So wonderful conclusion, Mohit. Thank you so much. I mean, it's you rightly said, and I would repeat your point only, that we should not, let our family having a problem, or our relationship having a problem, because we have to focus more on our career. Career, no doubt, career is important, money is important, but not at the cost of our relationship. Because the moment you will start having stress in your relationship, it will create an impact in your career. It will create an impact in your income also. So make sure you devote enough time in your relationship. Don't take it granted, guys. As Mohit said, we all are working for our family only. So let's give more time to our family. Let's give more time to our relationship. Let's be intentional to make our home a happy home. With this, we conclude today's panel discussion. We look forward to see you again next week with one more interesting topic. And if you want us to have any other topic to be covered in this panel discussion, we welcome that as well. So with this, thank you so much. Take care and good night.
Thank you. Good night.